Welcome to this week's episode of The Nero Show. In today's episode,
we see some new YouTube bike reviewers, including a Chinese Scott Foyle lookalike.
Leadville or the Mountain Bike World Championships, which cut through more?
More World Championships wrap up. The Grand FONDO World Championships, Pidcock winning the mountain bike race. Does it really matter?
Is heat adaptation the trick to your training, and AI-generated YouTube titles? All right, let's get into it. All right, so we had Alex from Peak Talk on, and yeah, again, we come away from these sort of chats with loads of questions, and more questions seem to come out of them. I've listened back to it a few times now, Jesse, not just to listen to the sound of our own voices, but because I kind of thought there was a lot in there. But one of the big statements, and I think you asked Alex this question, was along the lines of, okay, prices are going up, up, and up, yet what do you think, Alex? What do you think, taking everything you've seen into account, your own personal experience, you know, your background, you as a cyclist, do you think bikes are a ripoff? And basically he says yes. And he says yes for a whole heap of bloody reasons. And I'm there going, shit, am I didn't want to be this person, like, getting all uppity about this stuff.
Well, I mean, objectively, you can look at the cost of what this stuff costs to produce, and you can say $20,000 bike might cost $4,000 to produce. So there's obviously a lot of margin being made everywhere. But even, I know we pick on Specialized, but I think it's not necessarily that there's a bunch of billionaires walking around from selling road bikes. But, I mean, an example. So, Specialized, I used to work for a business that was acquired by the venture side of Specialized. And even though you buy a Specialized bike, but Specialized business as a whole does a whole heap of stuff that people don't even see operating in the background, not necessarily as it relates to bikes, but as it relates to tech, as it relates to customer tracking, a whole bunch of things that they're invested in. So it's not necessarily that there's 10 billionaires on the board at Specialized, but when you're buying a bike like that, you're essentially, part of that money is going into, as a business grows and they get more money in, they go and spend it on a whole bunch of stuff that's almost in no way related to the bike you're actually buying. So yes, as business gets bigger, it gets more efficient and they can keep production costs low. But then they also it seems like the brands get bigger, they get less efficient because they just grow and they fluff out. And then you're ending up, you know, when you're buying a bike, you're ending up paying for a bunch of stuff indirectly that you don't actually need.
Yeah, that's sort of, well, not my point, but where I was hoping you might lead, because I think it's not as though as us as customers are seeing, you know, take for example the local bike shop. It's not as though the guys who own local bike shops now are all of a sudden, you know, being able to put their daughters and sons through, you know, private universities and colleges. The trade-off for this more expensive bike hasn't translated down to the local bike shop essentially making more money. I mean, yes, there's a shop here in Fresno that does quite well. I know the two owners, they live literally just over there, and they're doing just as well as they were 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 30 years ago. They're quite happy. They've got quite a few staff in there. It's a great little shop, but I suppose the curve has not been equal for them in terms of the prices going up that they're charging their customers and more extensions built on the back of their houses. So again, it kind of makes me a little bit more confused I mean, I'd be quite happy for them. Do you know what I'm saying? If like Pete Talk said himself, like, I'm happy for people to make money. That's the way the world works. I've got no issue with that. This is not a communist society of bike owners. I get that, but yeah, I suppose it's the is it the invisible nature of it? Maybe I'm just being naive about this, but
that's why I pretty much ask every guest we get on that question, because I mean, I don't know. I'd love to sit down with someone, an accountant, on someone in finance on one of these bigger bike brands, and ask them, can we, like, why does an Ultegra Di2 mid-range spec cost 11,000 Aussie dollars? Like, why? Why does it have to be so expensive? I would love to know. Yeah. The only thing I would also say is, I mean, I don't agree that the tinfoil hat people are kind of like, the whole industry's a rip-off. These brands are just in it to make money. All the products are shit, blah, blah, blah. And I don't even agree with that at the high level. I mean, we have so much choice. Bikes are fantastic. I mean, we can nitpick on, you know, my tires 4 watts slower. But as a whole, I mean, road bikes are extremely fast. They ride well. I think we have so much choice in that as a whole, the brands produce good products. It's just that in one part of them, they're so expensive.
I'll be really interested to see what the comment reaction are to you saying bikes. I mean, and this is okay. So this brings up another point, right? So Michael Pride, the guy who owns Chapter 2, has asked. He said to me, "I'm more than happy to come on to the show and talk about his brand, how he makes money, the margins, what he thinks the value of the frames are, how much that costs. They're trying to develop a new bike, how much money they're putting into the research and development of that, etc., etc." And I'll be honest, I'm not sure I really want him to do that. Does that make sense? Because I feel like if he comes on here and it's almost as though, maybe I'm just super skeptical about this, but if he comes on, it does not matter what he says, he's going to cop shit, right? Because he will be the representative of the evil bike industry. And I almost feel like people will judge almost his lifestyle based on how much the recommended retail price of his frames are. And yeah, I don't know. I haven't come to terms with whether I think that's a good idea or not. I mean, I think there's certainly value in that information. Sorry, go on.
Well, I've seen him comment. Because I went back and read the comments on his one of the old Chapter 2 videos you did, and he was in the comments saying something on the lines of, you know, by the time it goes through a distributor and it's at retail, you know, we're not making tons of money. He said that in one of the comments. But the point is, isn't that part of the problem? I mean, it's not consumers' problem that some bike brand's business isn't very efficient and they have to charge bloated prices for a $600 frame. Like that, and that's consumers or someone buying. It's just, you know, we have a right, or it's fair enough on us to say, oh, this is a ripoff. If some company has some really inefficient 3 middleman step distribution process where the end person's paying 4 times or 6 times the price that it actually costs. Because that might sound a bit contradictory, because we came on last week, or I came on and said Pass Normal's a ripoff. But I think the difference, or the interesting part is, as it relates to road bikes from these bigger brands, it is actually hard to know if they are a ripoff because we don't know a breakdown of how much this stuff is costing because it's such a black box. And that's where having someone like Michael Pride on to really dig into it more, and not just with his brand, but also if he could sort of speculate on the bigger brands, would be really interesting because that's the stuff we don't know. Yeah.
That's a good point.
And then people could genuinely say whether or not the stuff is a ripoff or not. Yeah.
Only other thing I wanted to quickly say about Peak was he made a comment that he wish he could do more reviews. I wish he could do more reviews because he does probably the most detailed reviews on the internet. But it's weird, isn't it? Because he made that comment that, you know, you can't rely, or anyone on YouTube can't rely on sales to do reviews because ultimately that will impact your narrative, exactly your independence on the whole subject. Yet the whole problem that he has that he can't do more reviews is because he has to earn money in a real job and then can only do the reviews in his sort of spare time. So it's this, and the reviews that he's doing are therefore only the quote unquote smaller Chinese brands because they're the ones that he can get for free because he's not doing it for money. He's not getting sent SL8s weeks in advance of the launch for him to do a full peak talk review. I mean, that would be like peak review if that was a thing. And he's probably never going to get his hands on one because it costs 20K and he's got a mortgage to pay and it's not coming from YouTube. So I don't know. I just kind of wanted to say that it's this sort of weird sort of split where the good guys doing the review can't actually do the reviews because they don't have time or the money, but the guys who are actually doing all the reviews have the time, but they're not independent because the way they get the bikes is the only way for it to make financial sense.
Well, there have been some good reviews on YouTube because if you don't have the professional sort of reviewers, we're left with what YouTube was back in the day, which is your amateur reviewer. But watch this good one popped up. This was classic YouTube for me. So this was somehow this guy, Patrick Lino, cut through to my homepage, which is awesome. Algorithm doing its work. And it's a Tantan X38 review. Aero is in everything. You can probably go in the notes, Chris, and bring this one up. But it's basically this guy, Patrick. It's a 23-minute, 51-second overview and ride review of his Chinese carbon Scott Foil lookalike. And it's awesome. It's a combo. So yeah, look at it. How sick does that look?
Yeah.
That looks incredible, hey. So it's two-part video. It's the first part is Dave Arthur, and then it's the second part's more of your Cam Nichols. So he's combined it, and it's just a great video because he's bought this thing off direct from Tantan. He's built it up. He's got the carbon wheels. He's got the Chinese handlebars, and this is what you get if you're not a professional reviewer. We need these enthusiast guys doing the reviews, and this is peak YouTube for me. I love it. Interestingly enough, in terms of the actual review, wasn't glowing, I would say, given how sick the bike looks. And this is why the ride review bit's actually important, which we've been saying, is because the bike looks like a Scott Foil, and aerodynamically it's probably very good, but it didn't ride very well based on what he said. So yes, you need to. Otherwise, people buying this thinking it's a Scott Foil, by all accounts, based on this review, it doesn't ride like one. Let's say that. So, but yeah, this is awesome. Great video. Love it. Although, I mean, now I'm looking at it again. If it doesn't ride that well, let's say it's a little bit plank of wood spec. Let's just sort of use that as the description. Does it really matter? I mean, you put your 28mm tires on it. The person buying this, I'm going to say 99% of the time, is probably going to ride it 3 times a week for 45K. Looks cool. He's pretty light, actually. He's got 1x setup, but it's a size 56. It only weighs 7.3 or 7.4 kilos. You'd be pretty happy with this, I reckon.
I think it was a $700 US frame. I think I'm right in saying. And yeah, I actually think it was potentially slightly lighter than that. I think you're dead right. I mean, we've been kind of harping on this for a while, that a bike review, like an actual bike review, is almost, you have to talk about what tires you are running on it. And I honestly think you have to talk about then comparing the ride quality of it across maybe 2 sets of different tires, if you are actually wanting to talk about the ride feel. Because I think you're dead right. You could slap some 28s, some 30s on this, and I don't care how wooden that plank of wood is, like, it's not going to feel that sloppy with that amount of tire underneath you. I totally agree with you though about like what YouTube's really good for. they're just really hard to find these reviews. I mean, unless the algorithm spits this into your home feed, I'm not seeing this.
Yeah, there should be a button. Actually, no, I think I have seen that button, at least on the desktop YouTube website, where it says, what does it say? It's like, would you like more recommendations? It's like a button you can click, and it expands out and gives you, it goes a bit out of left field, but it doesn't, I'm scrolling through now, and it's not coming up now, but I've definitely seen that button, where clearly it knows what you might like, but it's not trying to default get you to watch it. But I agree.
I got a question for you then, Jesse. If I can not change the subject, but it's similar-ish, right? So last weekend was the Leadville 100, right? And also it was the XCO, I think is the correct initials, Mountain Bike World Championships. Okay? Two mountain bike races,
yes, sir.
I'm led to believe. Can I ask you, which of these two mountain bike events, one are world championships, the other seemingly massive in America, which floated into your conscious or essentially your homepage more with the social media or the way you consumed cycling, or neither, maybe?
I wouldn't have even known Leadville's on. So
Wow.
definitely the world champs. Yeah.
Really?
Yep. But that's also because of Instagram too. I got a decent amount of Pidcock frothing and Vanderpool binning it on Instagram. So between Instagram and YouTube, that's what I use.
That's wild. I was totally going to take you a completely different direction. I was going to have a big rant that the World Championships was on at the same time as the event that completely overshadowed it in my world. Maybe, I don't know, maybe YouTube's picked up where I am at the moment and has just decided that I'm only interested in an event that happened in Colorado. But yeah, I mean, I was even on Twitter actually. I was getting all the updates about Keegan, what's his name, and all the other people that I should be caring about. And yeah, the World Championships was this complete afterthought, and it was kind of pissing me off that these two events were on at the same time. The Leadville coverage, I will say, was kind of funny because it's like all those other Grand Prix or whatever they call them events, like it's in the middle of nowhere. But they had like this almost live helicopter coverage thing. So it was not a bad sort of thing. They had two commentators basically sitting in a helicopter, like, which was above the race, and they're like looking down at the race going, I think that's Keegan in the white. They're like seeing little ants down on the ground trying to work out who's oh no, it's actually not him. It's someone else.
Yeah. I honestly didn't know it was on.
What about Dylan Johnson's fork on his mountain? No, was it fork? No, it was a suspension fork on a road bike or something. Like this was like the biggest thing that's ever happened. You didn't get that either?
Nope.
Wow. Wow. Okay. And Trekkie came in the top 20. There you go. There's maybe that's relevant to you.
Oh wow. Oh, good on him. Shit.
That's, I think, his best lifetime Grand Prix. See, I know the lingo now. I know who's in it. Jeez, you're so I don't know, traditional and old school with your UCI.
No, I can tell it was in your bubble because you've put here in the notes that you were surprised that the World Champs was on the same weekend as Leadville. As if they're competing events. Are they? Really?
Comment down below. I reckon they are. Like, if you listened to Trainer Road podcast, you're not getting any updates on.
Oh my God.
Yeah, I'm drinking the Kool-Aid here. I'm getting in there. I'm getting full.
Clearly.
I'm getting full pacing strategies for Leadville. Though I will say this, it's almost impossible to watch the world. It is actually. I'm having to do like reverse engineered express VPNing to try and watch any of the world championships. Like I'm using a VPN to pretend I'm in Australia to see any SBS coverage of the said race.
Oh, yeah.
It's like reverse engineered. There's no free to air of anything. So I can totally understand why it gets completely overshadowed.
I didn't consider that. All right, so yeah, because it's totally free here. SBS show it. So how do you watch it in the US? Is it on Flow or one of those super expensive ones?
You'd have to do a Flow. I actually don't even know if they did the live of it. But GCN didn't have it. GCN Racing didn't have it. So yeah, you were left to. In fact, some of the websites were suggesting. That's how I worked out what to do. What I did. All the websites were suggesting get a VPN and log in as Australia and watch the SBS cover. It was kind of find that funny that people are using a VPN to watch to watch SBS. Rob Arnold will love that.
Pidcock won the world champs on the mountain bike. You know what? I actually could not care less. I'm standing by the. I'm not backing down. I seriously, if I review Pidcock's year, him winning the mountain bike, whatever it is, don't care. This is not a point in his column. So what's he done this year, right? So he won Strada Bianchi. He got 5th at Omloop. He won a stage of Volta Algarve. Oh, okay. 3rd at Amstel, 2nd at Liège. All right, I'll shut up. All right. 4th young rider. See, I'm looking at this result sheet. I'm going a stage at Algarve. I'm like, yep, sick. Why do INEOS care about mountain bike? I reckon INEOS has gone soft. They let their riders do too much other shit. That's why they're so average on the road now, because they've got all the Ganners off on the track and Pidcock's on the mountain bike. Maybe that's their sponsors don't care, but as a roadie, can they refocus, please?
Maybe it's because I don't know the actual connection of it, but maybe the lingering connection of British cycling and INEOS would be the rationale behind Pidcock's freedom to do that stuff. I mean, that obviously doesn't explain Ganna, but gold medals and things still matter, obviously, to British cycling, which is a publicly funded, well, not all publicly funded body anymore, is it? So maybe there's some links between INEOS and that are kind of doing that. But it does seem like the guys that own INEOS, like, surely they don't give a shit about mountain biking. They're in it for the tour and the tour only. It was the whole reason they got into it. Should I say this? I don't know. Is the mountain bike world champs just low-hanging fruit and you might as well take it while it's there?
Well, that's, fuck, you're going to piss off some mountain bikers. But that's, I mean, I kind of agree, because that's what I was saying. You got this talent that's like, this Pidcock talent who was the Remco back, when he was coming through, that level of froth. And he's winning mountain bike world champs. Who cares? You're on a road cycling team.
I think that's where this, like, the tongue-in-cheek of this conversation is coming from, that we were kind of, and I believed that was the Remco, this was the new age now, we were going to get these guys and it was going to be Pidcock against Remco, against Tadej, etc., and it feels like Pidcock's sort of, I don't know, he's like having his gap year. He doesn't want to knuckle down yet and get his full-time job. He's going to spend a year traveling South America, and then eventually he'll come back and start clocking in. But Remco will already be like management level, and yeah, I don't know. I feel like that's why we're sort of taking the piss out of him as much as we are. And having said that, just looking at his 2023 results, it's still pretty good. So this was the first, what did they call it? Like the Mega World Championships or whatever it was. So you had all every discipline, blah, blah, blah.
Super Worlds.
Yes. Grand Fondo Worlds was also on.
Yep.
Did you have any feedback on it? Did you have any athletes doing it? I saw nothing about it. Was it a success? I didn't even know. Did they get to use the same course? Like, how did it actually play out?
It was a good event. The course is pretty hilly. I don't know if they actually finished on the finishing. I don't think they did loops. Let me bring that up.
while you're bringing that up, we'll just quickly say I had a lot of people sending me photos of people riding in a national kit for the Grand Fondo thing, asking me to rant about it or something on here. Look, I am well aware that the federations force you to do it, seemingly, which, yeah, whatever. I don't agree with that. I'm in the same camp as Jesse on this one, that you should be selected by a national body to represent your country for you to then wear the stripes or the colours of your national country. We seem to have just decided that all bets are off with this, so you have to do it. So I'm not going to shit on people who are forced to do it. I know a couple of people who were forced to do it and they didn't feel comfortable doing it themselves. So I'm not going to have a go at that.
I think Grand Fondo Worlds was good. I had a few riders doing it. Good hilly course, pretty selective. Wasn't just, sometimes their courses aren't that selective, and then you got this Grand Fondo that's almost a, pretty big group finishes, which is not what you want. So I think the course is pretty good, and then you're in Glasgow. Now Glasgow, I mean, I did hear feedback from some riders that they weren't desperate to go there just as a whole or get the family to go over there. But as an event, it was great because then it had, riders can hang around and watch the actual worlds. I rated it. So if they keep doing that.
Was it before the men's road race or in that week between?
It was before.
Okay.
It was all it was all done the weekend before, and then the time trial was on the Monday. And then you went into the elite events.
Was there any drug testing that you know of at the Grand Fondo Worlds?
I don't know. I'm guessing they would have been testing probably for the guys that won for the podium, most likely. But yeah, I don't know exactly. The Worlds kit is just on the Nationals kit. I don't know why they forced that. It is a little bit annoying. I had a few riders that weren't desperate to use it. It was just, they almost felt a bit awkward because you're forced to use it by the UCI to actually compete. So, I still don't like, I don't know why they're doing that. Why they're forcing that. I guess it makes the event look, it makes the event look cooler, doesn't it? Because you've got the UCI, it creates more froth because then you're seeing photos from the Grand Fondo World Champs and everyone's in a national kit. And it makes it look, like it makes it look like it's bigger than it is. Now, that's not to say it's not a big deal. Racing, and that's the peak event for most guys' seasons if they're doing Grand Fondo World Champs. So it's still a big deal. But to me, it's a bit false making everyone ride in a national team kit. And also quite expensive as well. Because if you're racing it, you're probably going to want to be in a skin suit if you're doing it competitively. So you're then having to fork out for a custom, Australian coloured or your national team coloured skin suit. All right, there's $400 or $500 you're never going to get back. So the main thing I didn't like is that they only released the course. From memory, it was about 5 weeks before the event. So you had guys training for probably what's going to be the biggest thing they're going to do all year. And we didn't know what the course was until almost a month before. So that is not good. What if they managed to find a 20-minute climb in Glasgow, which there isn't one? I could estimate roughly what the course was going to be based on the terrain around. But if they move that around and you're somewhere with alpine climbs and you're a month before, you don't know, am I going up a 30-minute climb or is it going to be 2-minute climbs if there's that terrain at the location? So that's a massive problem. They need to sort that out, please.
I want the Grand Fondo Worlds or whatever you want to call it to matter. I really do. I just feel like the UCI are going to turn it into a money-grabbing exercise. I mean, the forcing guys to run the national kits is one of those things, and also the whole qualification thing of it's complete bogus bullshit as well. Like, I'm sorry, but look, any man and his dog can really qualify. You only have to be pretty solidly fit to qualify it at the pre-designated qualifying events. And we had one here in Australia, in Brisbane. And, you know, that's a big expense to go and to do that sort of thing. But again, it's weird because the actual physical athletic side of it, there's not a huge barrier to that entry. The biggest barrier to entry to that event is just money. Like, and whatever, that's obviously it's designed for people who have that sort of disposable cash and they want to follow that through. That's perfectly fine. I don't know. I just feel like it could be a little bit more, okay, sorry, but less participation, more competition. Maybe I'm wrong about that, but I would maybe like that.
I can see that. I mean, the first thing is that the even having to get in the top half, is it 30% or 50% of the results or whatever the cutoff is?
Yeah. It's like whatever.
It's I think as a rider, it's a good thing because if you, I mean, I don't know if you've seen a rider that finishes in the bottom 10% of a local Grand Fondo. I mean, if you had a field half full of them, it's going to be dangerous. I can tell you that. So at a world champs, you need to have some sort of, you know, cut the fluff just for safety because the people in the bottom percent of a Grand Fondo event aren't that experienced and you don't want them up there with, you know, Jens from Belgium doing 400 watts on the front. For someone that isn't good enough to compete at, how can I even say, like to go to Masters, you know, a Masters World Champs on the track or to go to some sort of UCI event, which, you know, if you're Masters, you're not going to be good enough anyway to do that. But it's the only, you could travel and do, you know, a LATAP sort of event or a Fondo. But it's such a good thing to have. I'm so happy it exists because it's such a good thing for most riders to do. I feel bad really saying anything bad about it because on a whole, it's such a good event. So, yeah.
So you mentioned like the Masters Track World Championships. See, I think the Grand Fondo Road World Championships has become the Masters Road World Championships. And hence, it should be, I mean, you go to Masters Nationals in Australia, that is incredibly elite cyclists, athletes doing that. And I feel like the Grand Fondo World Championships should be that as well. I think that's what I'm saying.
Well, here you go, Chris. You need to make a new event because that is a hole in the calendar. How come there's Masters Track World Champs but no Masters Road Race World Champs? And then you could actually have an Australian selected national team of your Masters category based on whatever criteria they want to set. And you go over and you race like you're doing the World Road Race Champs, but you're in the Masters. And that would be it would be an actual road race. It would be totally separate from the Grand Fondo World Championships. It's just unfortunate that event doesn't exist at all. They could include that, couldn't they? I mean, there's a lot of races to put on because you got so many age categories.
But the Grand Fondo is split into the 5-year. It's split into the 5-year age cats, isn't it? It's just like a Master. So it's.
Yeah, it is. It is, but it's not a road race. It's a Grand Fondo. So the road race one doesn't exist. Yeah. So the question, I guess you're thinking of the Grand Fondo World Championships as if it is a Masters Road Race World Championships. But I think most people don't think of it like that. They just accept that there's no such thing as a Masters World Road Race Champs.
But I think there was. Didn't Liam Kelly? I feel like there was. I'm gonna have to. Yeah, I'm gonna dig that one out. I reckon there was a Masters Road World Championships, and that's what this became. Can I have a little training chat with you?
Sure.
I don't know if it's training chat. Maybe it's physiology chat. I'm not sure. So I've been riding over here in really hot conditions, okay? 35 degrees minimum for most rides. Obviously, there's a period of time where I do, like, there's a kind of heat adaptation to this, all right? So my body gets used to this heat, ultimately, all right? My question is this, like, I feel like I've been here for 10 days, 2-ish weeks, something like that. So I feel like maybe I am adapted at this point to the heat as much as I'm going to. My question is, like, if I continue to ride in this heat, is there any like physiological training benefit that I will take from this experience beyond having just adapted to the heat? So do you know what I mean? Does that make sense? So when I go back to normal Sydney spring or whatever it might be, I've seen some benefit from training in that heat beyond it being just residual heat adaptation. Like if there's a hot day when I get back to Sydney, that I'm comfortable. Do you know?
Yep. No.
Damn.
You would get benefits. The benefits that you got as they relate to the heat acclimation will have a benefit, like the increased in the plasma volume. And if you're there long enough in hot enough heat, you may also see a bit of a rise in hemoglobin mass, a little bit higher transport of oxygen, possibly. That one's not as settled. But that'll wear off as soon as you go back into regular temperatures. That'll wear off over 1 or 2 weeks and you'll be pretty much back to normal. So
all this sweat, all this like stinking up my gear, nothing.
Pretty much, yes. I would actually say if you were there long enough, and this happens at altitude, what you might find as well is you could actually, now we're really nitpicking here, but technically you could lose fitness because you've been over there and it's been what? I've seen some of your temperatures is between 40 and 50 Celsius max on some of these rides.
Yep.
So you're essentially riding around every day between 5 and 10% lower power for every effort than you would have done in normal temperatures, which is fine when you're in the heat because to different degrees, everyone's seeing that decrement. But at a muscular level, over time, there is some detraining that will take place when you go back to regular temperatures, and then the heat acclimation benefits wear off over about 1 to 2 weeks. You're actually not as strong because you've been riding at 5 or 10% less power for a month. And that's what happens at altitude, which is why when you go to altitude, you'll find riders, they try and sleep at altitude and drop down and train at sea level so they can do their sea level power. Unfortunately for you, you can't do your 20-degree temperature training rides because it's 40 degrees every day. Does that kind of make sense? Now, it's minimal. I'm not saying you're going to lose 10 watts off your FTP, but if anything, you may actually be worse off.
I was thinking about that exact thing today because it was just that I was barely able to push sort of 200 watts on a endurance ride for only 2 hours, and I was thinking to myself, like I'm physically not putting as much power out here, so it's not as though like there is less stress on my muscles no matter what. So. And it was interesting listening to your mate, Chris Christopherson. I've really got to remember his actual name. Cedric
his
Christopherson.
name's Cedric, not Chris.
Cedric. Big shout. Big fan. He was using heat as like a recovery tool. Is that right?
As a recovery tool? No, I thought he was doing a heat active heat session because he's got a hot race coming up, wasn't he?
No, he's in the Arctic Tour of Norway. It's not going to a hot race. He was using heat as a recovery tool because what he was suggesting was that his heart rate was higher because of the heat, but he was putting less stress on his legs because he's putting out less watts, and hence it was a recovery tool.
Oh, I'd have to watch the video. Is there something lost in translation? Maybe he might be trying to. Okay, he might be trying to increase the cardiovascular stimulus or the stimulus on the central adaptations, so on the blood and the heart, by exercising in the heat, and essentially, as you've been doing, reduce the muscular demand. Because wasn't he doing that after his VO2 max session on the trainer?
Correct.
So he's with less muscular load, he's trying to get a similar level of central load. Maybe, but that's not recovering. That's still a massive training stress. I'd have to watch the video. I'm not exactly sure. You definitely wouldn't be riding in a heat suit with your core temp at 39 degrees to recover. I don't know. I don't understand. I'd have to watch. I'd have to watch it. The only thing I'd say what you should do, Chris, though, when you get back, because it's very difficult to get the heat acclimation. It comes on quickly. You get most of the adaptations in about 2 weeks if you're getting that heat exposure every day. You'll be over there for 3 or 4 weeks. But it's actually quite easy to maintain. If you get a heat exposure just twice a week, that could be active or passive if you go to a sauna or something, you can maintain most of that. So if I was you, I would just not lose it. And then you can have the benefit of the higher plasma volume and potentially the hemoglobin and things like that. So you'd be better off, and the sweat rate and the faster onset of sweat and things like that. So I would, if I was you, when you get back, even though it's not going to be, because you'll be getting back, it'll be September, still coming out of winter, I would just try and hold on to that for as long as you can, which isn't that hard. Because you have you've got access to a sauna, don't you?
Yeah, I got access to a sauna. I was actually thinking about this as like a random question. What would be like if, okay, not if money was no object, but like almost like you had a benefactor or something who said, okay, I'm willing to add something to your house. It could be anything like a pool, and like, I don't know, altitude, chambery thing, whatever. Would be what would you choose as the addition to your house?
Mm-hmm. Love this. I'm lucky because I'm in an apartment complex. I've already got a pool and a sauna. So I've already got that. What I would do is I would say, I want you to change my bedroom into an altitude room, but not a tent. I'm not interested in sleeping in a tent. I want the entire room to be like one of the altitude controlled rooms at the Australian Institute of Sport, so that I could be in here, or not this room, this is the second room, but I could be in here during the day working, I could be sleeping, and I could be easily, because I'm in here all day on the bloody computer, so that plus sleeping, I could be getting, 16 hours of altitude exposure a day if this room was at 3,000 meters. So
following that along, like you could set up the baby's room as an altitude room and create the ultimate athlete.
Yeah, they could grow up like an Ecuadorian.
Yeah,
on the border. Yeah, in the hill.
Don't worry about Coyle. Once he gets to elevation, he grew up in Randwick, but he was in a fantastic. I don't tell the kids. I don't tell the kids, like, if this the kids can have no say in this because it would be a pool immediately. But I love a sauna. Can I say it? I absolutely love a sauna. There's nothing better than getting in for 15, 20 minutes. And the one that I have access to is a public one. And I kind of view it a little bit like as it's like a climb. So if someone else gets in with you, it's like, all right, we're on. Let's see what you got. And you're sitting there, it starts warming up, you're getting hot, and then you start giving them the look. They start to sort of shudder a little bit, and then the best is when they get up and leave, and you've been in there the whole time. It's like dropping someone. It's just like, yeah, they couldn't hack it. They literally couldn't handle the heat. I love it. So yeah, I'd go sauna.
Is the one you have access to, is it an infrared one, or does it have the steam rocks?
Oh, steam rocks.
This is what I hate, right? You're in there. Now, if you, as athletes, we're not in there for 5 minutes. We like to sit there for 25, 30 minutes to get the proper exposure. And these old blokes come in and they just dump a bucket on the steam thing. But they only sit there for like 3 or 4 minutes. And I'm like, mate, I got to be in here for 20 minutes. I'm almost at death's door, like about to pass out. And they just come in, dump the bucket of water on the steam, and then leave. I'm like, thanks. I'm about to pass out. So that's it. I hate that. That's really annoying.
I rant about the other thing where the person opens the door and is like, oh, will I go in? Oh, I'm not sure. Oh, should I come in? The door's still open this whole time. We're losing good quality acclimation, just flooding out the door. No one cares about it. And eventually the person goes, no, I'll leave it. I'm like, thanks. It's like 15 degrees in here and cold now. Appreciate that. GC put a good video up during the week. Oh, he had me. He really had me. I mean, we've been looking at all these SL8s and everything and blah, blah, blah for the last few weeks. But he put that red Trek up. And I got to say, even the one buy on it just had me. I think I messaged you and him like within minutes of him putting the video up, being just like, So, what's stock levels like on the Madone? It's looking pretty good. Like, and I've got an unresearched. Are we still doing unresearched facts? Okay, hear me out. All right. So the reason Specialized didn't update the Venge this year is because they know they can't compete with that Trek Madone. You put the two next to each other, and that Trek Madone is still just going to shit all over it, especially in that factory red.
Wow. Yeah. It looked hot. But what did it have? Mechanical disc brakes. What was the story with that? What was what are you doing? What was there a reason for that? Are they lighter?
It was lighter. Yeah. He wanted a lighter one. Yeah.
That's so slop. Mechanical disc brakes. That's what you get on like a $600 B-twin. Wow.
I loved his title for it though. I got to say GC's titles are they're going next level now. Like they've completely lost all relevance. Like it's no longer, you can't just write like Scott Foyle review or anything like that. It's got what was the Trek one? It's like faster than a TT bike? ? Impressively light. Trek Madone.
Star.
Custom build. Yes, we love you. We love you, mate. It's interesting, like with his channel though, like his audience are so obvious what they want. Like he puts I love that he does put mountain bike stuff on, but as soon as he puts one up, I'm just like, this is going to have like an 1/8 of your views. Like you just know it because his audience want one thing and one thing only, and it's bling.
If I could, if you had two bikes right now, I rolled you out a Trek Madone and an SL8. What would you pick?
Is the Trek in red?
They're both plain white.
Trek Madone.
Ooh.
Didn't you listen to Peak Talk? He told me that I benefit more from aero bikes than you.
Yes.
So
yep.
it's a no-brainer. I want a hole in my butt. What about you?
I'd also go the Trek, to be honest. I'd also go the Trek, I think. Although I did see the I saw an SL8 in store yesterday, and it is thin. That back end looks like a Dogma. Remember we commented the Dogma from behind. She's nice and slim, and the SL8 is also slim in the rear end too. And that was interesting. Yeah, interesting to look at. The tubes are very thin. I just wouldn't suit it. I think just for fashion, I think I'd suit a Madone better.
I was getting Focus Zalco Max Mobius vibes on those seat stays. Like they're so thin. They're toothpick thin. Yeah, I think that last video that he put up, it was like a 6.3K build. Like it's very light. It really is.
The aerodynamics as well. I know Peak Talk said you can't compare aero just by looking at bike. He did put me on roast for doing that. But you look at the SL8 and the Madone, there is like twice as much material on the Madone. How that's gonna be faster?
No, I'm sitting on the fence now. Someone said that in the comments. They're like, oh, finally someone on this show who tells it as it is. Supposedly we don't offer our opinions anymore, according to that person. So Alex is the first person who's ever come on our channel and offered an opinion. So no, I'm just going to sit on the fence. Yeah, totally agree with you. Like, yeah, no, it's got to be. It's got to be. We're back to just saying it's got to be. So before we came on, I asked Chat GPT to churn out some YouTube titles, okay, for this channel, so a cycling related YouTube channel.
Okay.
So keep an eye out for these this week, ladies and gentlemen. Here we go. Modern bikes will never ride this good. Keep an eye out for that one. Testing the new Yolio gravel wheels. Attempting the world's steepest streets. Following Duran riders' advice for weight loss.
Okay. Yep.
And I quit alcohol. the results are shocking.
There you go. You're now
So
another
there you go.
nondescript challenge channel. There
Will between now and our next episode there be a video released on this platform with one of those titles?
Well, how often are Chat GPT updating their back end? Because that seems like they're pretty recent.
They're updating it in real time. Like when you ask it, it's doing its keyword search. I would imagine that's how it generates it.
Yeah, but the AI's learnt on data from the internet. Is it constantly relearning? Because it would be like scraping data from at one point in time and then learning on that data, wouldn't it? I mean, whatever.
Yeah, I think
Okay,
so.
let's just end it.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, send it. All right. Thank you very much for your time, Jesse. We will see you all next week.
See you then.